Hello everyone, my name is Riley Larkin and this is my group presentation that I worked on with Robert Odom on the causes and consequences of environmental destruction. And our group's topic today is land management, so I'll kind of be talking about some of the unsustainable land management practices we see today, and kind of how corporate interest has gotten us into this problem and what we can do about it in the future potentially. So to start with some of the problems in land management, overall, there's mismanagement of resources and funding. And this wasteful and inefficient land management is causing environmental degradation and risk to community health, mainly due to government corruption and preferral of corporate interest over the will and the needs of the people. So a little bit how unsustainable land management impacts the people. Creates health problems that reduce quality of life, mainly through pollution of land, and once the land becomes unproductive, once these corporations have drained all the resources and polluted the land, communities are left to kind of clean up the mess themselves, or more often than not, they're forced to leave and find homes where they can work and have clean drinking water and food and access to jobs. And this displacement causes social conflict, because there's increasingly scarce resources and increasingly scarce land. So people are being forced out of their communities and pushed into other areas, and it's causing unnecessary social conflict. And about how it affects the environment, unsustainable land management causes habitat loss and habitat fragmentation. This kind of thoughtless conversion of natural habitats for agriculture and urban sprawl has destroyed homes for wildlife and also fragments global ecosystems. Overgrazing and intense agriculture and deforestation, this all strips vegetation that is needed in the soil, and this exposes the soil to rain and wind and reduces the fertility of the soil, which can even create new food deserts for people, and overall just pollute the land and make it unusable. Another major impact on the environment from improper land management is water pollution from runoff. Often, runoff from agriculture or urban development. This can carry fertilizers, pesticides, animal waste, other pollutants directly into rivers and lakes, which degrades drinking water, making it unsafe for people to use as a resource. And now a little bit about state corporate contributions to the problem. We see the situation we're in, but why and how did it get this bad this quickly? I think it's important to state that land managers are employed at the federal, state, and local levels, and they're all trying to manage the land based on the laws and policies of the lands they manage, and also balance the needs of the user groups at the same time. And this is an ongoing and difficult process, and as we see corporate and state contributions becoming increasingly intertwined, unfortunately corporate interests typically prevail over the will of the people. And I would say even more so, of course, with increased government support. And I think a good example of this is the Citizens United versus FEC 2010 Supreme Court ruling. So a little bit more about the Supreme Court ruling. Talk about it in Chapter 5 of our textbook by Gould and Lewis. Excuse me. So in terms of politics, it was once a felony for corporations to give money to politicians and political parties. But by claiming the human right of free speech, corporations expanded that to mean that the unlimited right to put corporate money into politics. So I think this Supreme Court ruling is kind of main facilitator to the situation that we see today, kind of the complete takeover of the government at all levels, both sides, by corporate interests. And here I included a picture of the Supreme Court justices from 2010. And a little bit more about state corporate contributions to the problem. How have these things caused such issues? How has the Supreme Court decision affected this? I would say because people are getting caught up, the will and the needs of the people and the health of the environment is getting caught up in legal battles between landowners and land use regulators, right? The market and political coordination. And these unspoken political choices and distributional effects that are inherent in the sale of public land for facilities or infrastructure redevelopment. Our public authorities, they're not doing enough to stand up and represent the people the way that they're hired to. But we're seeing as corporate and state contributions are increasingly intertwined and T&Cs take control of both branches of the government, it's becoming increasingly harder to do. Here I included a picture of a current nominee for the Director of Bureau of Land Management, Stephen Pierce. He previously owned a oil field services company. So I think this is just an example here of how certain people are being given these positions and their needs are not necessarily where they need to be. They are directly focused on corporate interests and maintaining their seat in the government and keeping money in their own pockets coming in. And all of this, I think, follows the trends of neoliberal globalization, which we've been talking a little bit about in class, and transnational corporations are a key to this neoliberal globalization. But what is neoliberal globalization, and how does it help T&Cs remain free to pollute as they please? Rob Nixon explains the concept in his book, Slow Violence and Environmentalism of the Poor. I think he explains it very well. A neoliberal ideology that erodes national sovereignty and turns answerability into a bewildering transnational maze that makes it easier for global corporations to sustain an evasive geopolitics of deferral in matters of environmental injury, remediation, and redress. I think this sums it up perfectly that, if communities, they want to, come together and do something or get justice for their polluted and ruined communities, they're not able to do that because T&Cs have bought and sold the government and the regulators on both sides. And a little bit more on neoliberalism, I think Dr. Sheel describes the traits more succinctly on slides 11 of the Week 8 lecture. I think this description of some of the main traits of neoliberalism really helps explain how these economic policies benefit T&Cs and have caused the environmental deregulation and degradation that we see today. Specifically, the focus on a free market and with minimal state regulation based on a belief of self-regulating markets. This has just created a trend of privatization, the turning over public goods into private hands, and furthered the globalization of economic activities, production, consumption, disposal, by a trend of accumulation by dispossession. And large transnational corporations are key players in this neoliberal globalization and environmental deregulation. So T&Cs and the corporate agenda. Why exactly are T&Cs and corporations so bad for land management? They largely control both major political parties in the United States, as I was saying, as well as individual politicians. In a business sense, in this country, state and local communities once had stronger legal protections from entrepreneurs and local businesses, but T&Cs simply claim discrimination and these laws no longer exist. So as a result, local, regional, and state economies are more vulnerable to predatory T&Cs. So that's why we've been seeing an increase in these corporations coming in and buying up public lands and resources. A little bit more on this with a current example, the T&Cs and the corporate agenda. Unfortunately, Minnesota Power has sold to one of the world's most prolific global asset management conglomerates, BlackRock. Right? BlackRock has previously been criticized for investing in fossil fuel companies and engaging in human rights violations and such. So again, this is the current example of corporations taking control of public utilities and public land. It shows a concerning trend of T&Cs and major corporations gaining even more control over land management and the future health of the environment, right? So the corporate agenda, land management, overall is to offshore economic and environmental ruin and strip the land of its resources no matter the cost to the public, right? So they're focusing on that treadmill of production, which we talked about in chapter 3. They don't care what's fueling the treadmill, they just want it to keep going. And what's fueling the treadmill is our healthy environment and the health of our communities, right? So offshoring the economic and environmental ruin is another symptom of playbook of colonial capitalism, and forcing these countries into an export-led development model only serves the interests of these corporations, which are coming and stripping the environment and the communities of their resources. So again, to summarize the cost of unsustainable land management on the people, it causes health issues and reduced quality of life, it displaces people and causes unnecessary social conflict. And as for the environment, it causes massive habitat loss and fragmentation globally. soil erosion and degradation, as well as water, ground, and air pollution that affects all of us. No matter where we are on the globe, this is going to affect all of us. So it's very important that we come together and support sustainable land management practices. I included this graphic here of some sustainable land management practices from the World Wildlife Foundation. Just a kind of a quick overview of some new practices people are working towards. And the future of land management, I think, relies in the public, and we must support sustainable land management policies that address and ensure environmental justice for all. Thank you.